Welcome to All for United WFC. It is the Ben and Matt Saturday Night Show, slightly earlier because of the Euros. But before we start on anything, I have to say and wish and pray a speedy recovery to Christian Eriksen. I'm just lost for words. I can't believe what I saw from the BBC as well. It's an absolute disgrace keeping the cameras on for that long. Should have cut back to the studio straight away. They do it quick enough when there's a streaker on the field. I just feel for his family, I really do. But I'm glad he's in a stabilised condition now, and I just wish him all the best. And on behalf of All for United and All for United WFC, wish him a speedy recovery, and I hope he gets well soon. How are we, Matt, anyway?
Apart from that, not bad, yeah. But, just echo what you've said pretty much. Bad from the BBC. Shocking, really. I don't even know, to be honest. I just, like you, just hope, he makes a quick recovery. I think we've seen some of the pictures of I think you said to me before going live about Fabrizio Romario tweeted pictures of him on this stretcher awake. So, I suppose we'll just leave it there. But, yeah, just echo your thoughts, speedy recovery to him and fingers crossed, really.
Anthony, how are you, my friend?
Yeah, I'm all right. Obviously, when something like this happens in football, or any walk of life, the player or whoever it is, it just takes football in. Football doesn't matter, does it? Like you've both said, we wish him a speedy recovery. It seems that he's stabilised, which is good. And you just think how lucky to have all that medical attention round. It makes you wonder if it happens in Sunday League football, or like I said to you before, Ben, before even the women's game, you only have to look at the Charlton game when United were there and they ran out of oxygen. So I wish him a speedy recovery, and hopefully he'll recover and hopefully he'll be able to continue.
Absolutely, mate, absolutely. Thank you for everybody in the comments. Thank you for joining us live. I know it was a little bit earlier than we usually do it, but as I said at the top of the show, because of the Euros, this is our temporary start time now, 7 o'clock, until the Euros finish, and then we're back to normal 8 o'clock. Lots to discuss in the show. I know we're a bit, we're not our usual chirpy selves, but, the things like that, just really makes you think in life, how short life really is. And I echo that, John, as well. Thoughts with him and his partner and family. Yeah, absolutely. But Matt, I should crack on with the show now anyway. Just get that up. You voice noted me the other day speaking about shall we say, is the homegrown rules ruining the development of young players, especially in this country, where I'm not sure what the rules are, by the way, because there are different rules between the men's and the women's games. So I'm going to let you get into that and explain to everybody who, like myself, might not know the ins and outs of the women's games rules over this subject. So if you'd just like to quickly give a brief outline on what the actual rules are for this homegrown development of youth and what that means in terms of player development.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think did it come in last season, or it was mentioned last season for coming in sort of next season, should I say? But yeah, I just think it's this homegrown rule, and it's sort of similar to the men's game a little bit, and it's there's the age cap of players being in and around a team sort of for 3 years. Now obviously, I think it's something like 25 registered players, and currently it's 24, so they've given us one extra. And they've got to sort of be at an English club for 3 years before the age of 21. Now, I might be wrong on this, but I believe goalkeepers don't count towards this. But like I say, could be wrong on it. And yeah, they've got to have sort of I think it is 8 homegrown registered players. I believe the championship's something like 60% of their squad. That's assuming that they take out sort of the maximum of 25 players. So, yeah, I mean, it's one of them. They brought in these rules, and they were saying, the idea is it boosts the Lionesses and we improve the English talent. But I think, for me, the reason why we're doing this show and the reason why we're having this discussion is that, in my view, I think it's a bit of a hindrance because I know we're going to get into it properly, but for me, you look at these teams hoarding players, and listen, they're not going to play, and you're not telling me that that's doing them any favors. The issue with it is that it's not protecting players. I can see why they want to do it, and I'm fully behind the reasoning, but the implementation of it for me is poor. They think that players are going to get game time, and that should be the way to do it. But for me, loan them out. The only way that it's going to work is the loans, and it's becoming, a little bit of a joke, really. But I'll sort of, let you sort of speak on it, and Anthony as well, before we get properly into it. But like I say, in terms of the rulings, we do need 8 in a squad. So yeah, that's that really.
Anthony, on that hoarding of players that Matt mentioned there, would it be more beneficial for clubs to look to loan out players instead of the hoarding out, just to try and meet a quota? For example, Manchester City stockpile players, and Chelsea, even in the men's game, they stockpile loads of young talent. And we very rarely ever see them in a Chelsea shirt. What Chelsea do though for the men's side is they do loan them out all over the world. How worried should we be?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like you said, with Chelsea, I think they've got about 33 players on their books that are on loan all over the world. I think it's a bit different. I'm not sure if it's different with men's and women's size squads. You got to have 25 registered, isn't it? So, and then I read that it's 6 loanees.
Yep,
you can get. So it's balancing it. You've got to do what's best for the club, but also the players' development. If you get all these players in, but they're not playing, and you've just brought them in for the sake of the number thing, then it's not going to benefit anyone, is it? It's not going to benefit you as a club. It's not going to benefit the player's career. So it's that fine balance of get players in and that, but you need to buy players that have got a chance of progressing in their careers further, not just treating them as, well, yeah, we got this quota of players, we don't have to worry about that now. If you're good enough, you're good enough. If they're not good enough, then so it's definitely the fine balance between bringing in loads and having them not play. So
yeah, absolutely, mate. Matt, what is the way around it? What's the perfect way around it? What should the FA maybe do to try and, should they change the rules? Should there be, I don't know, a cap on how many players that they can maybe hoard, if that's a word, hoard at the same time?
Do you know what I think? Listen, they brought it in now. There's no perfect way around it. But I think if it was me calling the shots, to stop the hoarding, I'd be forcing a certain number of minutes on the pitch.
Yeah.
So it's they've increased the squad limit by 1 from 24 to 25, which is just balmy. The loans is increased, which is okay, but then I'd be forcing the minutes because I look at some of these, and I feel sorry for the players. I really do. I think if you, I don't want to name names, I'm going to have to. If you're a Ruby Mace and you go into Man City, once in a lifetime opportunity, I fully get that. Brilliant training facility, playing with world-class players, absolutely fine, not a problem. But, she's just been tremendous for Birmingham City. Now, obviously, she's not going to go back there, fine. But why not then? Okay, the issue is because she's under 18, they're not on a pro deal. So she's free to negotiate and pay compensation. So she's pretty much calling the shots. Now, for me, obviously, Arsenal may have offered her a pro deal, but this is where the whole system needs looking at because she could have benefited from a loan from the likes of maybe a Villa, a Brighton, a West Ham maybe, and play weekly football. Now, I'm not being funny, at Man City, is she going to be playing weekly? Possibly not. She'll probably get a few games here and there. However, if they changed it and they said, right, well, of those 8 homegrown players, all 8 or 6 out of 8 have to complete so many minutes in the league, that's not including cups, in the league this season, to stop them hoarding and doing things like that, then that's the way, and that's the only way you're going to develop players, for me. I look at another City player, Esme Morgan, and they loaned her out to Everton, and she played, and then she went back to City, and she got the odd Conti Cup game, and maybe an FA Cup against a non-league team or a lower league side, and it's just not good enough. It's overall... Chelsea the other day, they extended Jess Carter's contract. She was somebody they want to get rid of. Why have they extended it? Because she's English, because they've only got 8 English players. Look at Kylie Telford. Why is she being a player coach to fit the quota? And I could go on and on and on. I really could. But this is happening across the game. And, there's been rumours this week at our club of a certain goalkeeper, maybe 2, wanting to leave due to lack of minutes, which is perfectly fine. No issues with that. But it's like, these players need to go out and play the games. And if they're not playing first team games at the club, they need to be playing somewhere. So, it begs the question, doesn't it? They're all moving and they're all extending contracts to fill a quota. It's box ticking. It really is. And it's not doing the player any good. The club loving it because they're fulfilling, the requirements as per, the league and the license rules now. But in terms of the player, it's doing absolutely nothing for them. It really isn't. I think... it's a shame because Ruby's a talented player, hugely talented player. And it's one I know I read the other day, Maya Letitia at Brighton, she wants a move and she was linked with Chelsea, but she's saying, well, she wants to be guaranteed minutes. And, hats off to her. She may get a Chelsea move, she may not. But if minutes are her sole reason for moving rather than money, then... or even not money, but, for a bigger club, then fair play. I think it's easy for a young player to jump ship, to try and, get the medals and trophies and things, which you can't blame them at that age, to be fair. But in terms of development, it does become difficult. Just looking at questions, are 5 subs staying? Do you know what? I honestly don't know. That'd be one to tweet.
I don't think so from next season. I think the Premier League will stick with 3, and I think European competition, the men's game, going back to 3. Yeah, it's as a new normal season. They're going to take it as so. For the women, I don't know myself, but I just know for the men, I think every competition go back to 3.
Yeah, I'd assume it would follow suit. John's saying how Bagley cope with not playing many games. Cup goalkeeper. It's difficult again because it's something where you don't want to massively rotate the keeper, but the trouble is when we had cup games, we still played Mary. I say the trouble, it wasn't really an issue for me. I know people moaned. But for me, I would have liked to have seen, Fran Bentley come on against Burnley for half an hour. Surely she could have played the whole game. And, we saw Rambo in the Conti Cup, and that was it then. We have, 4 Conti Cup games? We had a few FA Cup games. Why can't they play? Now, it's a fair point John makes about, will she play many? I mean, listen, Mary's just had surgery. We don't know what for. We don't know how long she's out, when she's back. So it might be that she comes in and starts at least pre-season. But I'd like to think, for me, I've always rated Sophie, and Sophie's somebody I've mentioned, sort of last summer to come in. And I think she would push Mary all the way. Now, I've talked about in the past goalkeepers playing against sort of lower opposition, and that's not to disrespect them, but, your likes of your West Hams and your whoever else is down there, Brighton's maybe, why not? Like I say, it's not always ideal because you're back for like a settled keeper and consistent, but goalkeeper's one of them because it's one single sole position. It does become very difficult. But yeah, that's sort of my thoughts on it anyway. Like I say, force them to play them if they're going to hoard them.
The question I want to ask you, Anthony, is it also down on the player and a lack of ambition to play minutes? Because some of these are going to these clubs knowing that they're not going to get very many minutes and very little game time. Do you think it's a lack of ambition on a player's part, or do you think it's maybe a security thing, knowing that say for example they're going to a Manchester City or a Chelsea, knowing they'll pick up some decent wages and they'll be comfortable for a year or two? Do you think it's maybe showing a lack of ambition on their side, or do you think they're trying to maybe think, "Oh, this is be a good move for me. I'm going to try and force my way in"?
I think it's a bit of both. I think you're thinking, yeah, if I go to Chelsea and City, I've got a high percentage of chance of winning a trophy. Now, you can look at it that way, but then you can look at it, how much are you going to contribute to winning that tournament? It's all right going there and winning something, but deep down, would you feel like you contributed to it if you've played about 10 minutes? Now, if it was me personally, I wouldn't feel like I deserve it. Yeah, you've been part of a squad, and as a whole, it is a squad game. But you want to be playing, don't you? You mention the security side of things, and I think in the women's game, yeah, it is. You're gonna maybe get a year or two on a good wage, and it's the security thing, isn't it? It's a bit different in the men's game where you get your 3-4 year contracts, and then even if you do leave someone like United for someone lower down, you're still gonna have the money, the financial, even if you do leave one of the big clubs. Whereas in the WSL, other than Chelsea, City, Arsenal, maybe United, if they're playing it, once you've left them, you're not going to get as much. And we see how some players drop down a level as well, and it might become a bit different now that more teams are going to become in full time. So there is that security, hopefully, with them becoming full time. But like you said, it's a bit of both. You want to be ambitious and you want to win trophies and that, but you also do want the job security, the money security. We all know that it's not a long career, so it's a bit of both, isn't it? You're thinking about your career side of things, but with the ambition of winning something as well at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, question I was going through my head when you sent me that voice note was about our own academy as well. Do you think it'll have an impact on our academy as well? when teams start hoarding these English players to keep the quota number up, do you think it'll harm? Like, for example, I'm not saying that we'll do it, but for example, if United started doing that, do you think it'll harm progression of players coming through our own academy?
I think it doesn't help. The issue with the development league that I have at the minute is that because there's no in between, you go in there age 16 and you're playing development football. Now, that and then going straight into WSL, into what I'd call sort of adult or senior football, with no gap in between, is difficult unless you are very, very, very talented. And not only just sort of with a ball, but sort of physically as well. You know, we had LJ at 16 actually, and she was very, very strong. You know, and that worked. But I think we've got to be careful because we start hoarding players. You know, there's no clear, like I say, link in between from WSL from development football to WSL, which, like I say, in itself is a problem. And the other thing about the development league is, you know, a lot of players sort of leave yearly. So if you look at ours now, obviously the ones that are still 16, 17 are still there, but there's some in there that are like 19 or 18, 18, 19 that move on to, I think we've lost one or two to universities in America.
Yeah.
I think Phoebe Holland's one that springs to mind. There is another one I can't think now. So your development squad's constantly chopping and changing. Now that's not ideal. So it's pretty much, it's football, so it's brutal and cutthroat anyway. But obviously, it's one of them that if you're not good enough for first team, you don't get your contract. You don't carry on. So I think it's tough in that respect as a young player because, like I say, there's no link in between, and we're losing a lot of people to America on scholarships because they have a designated program where they can go and pick up a degree and still play football. Now, the FA are trying to obviously change this, and we did this. We talked about this in a show a while back, actually, probably about February, March time, myself, John, Gareth. And, they are providing sort of this educational, qualificational program thing, the FA. But it's difficult. We're talking about blocking pathways and players being hoarded. I think, for me, what we've got to remember is players that aren't playing are going to stagnate. You've not kicked a ball for a year, maybe 2 years, 3 years. I mean, I fully get what, you were both saying and comments as well. And I totally agree about, it is a short career and you may want to win trophies and you may want to pick up the money. Absolutely. That's not a problem. But again, I'm going to use Ruby Mace again as an example because I feel for her. She goes there and she picks up a decent wage and, City may win 2 trophies next year and she gets a medal and she's won something brilliant. But how harmful is it going to be if you play 3 or 4 games a season over 2-3 years, when you could have played, God knows, say 15 to 20 per season? You're talking like 45 games versus 10, just to sort of, briefly put it out there. So, and again, I saw comments earlier on about LJ, and I think that's the worry for me. This season she's been very injury hit, but when she's fit, we play her because that's how good of a player she is. I worry for her development again at Chelsea, They've got a massive, talented squad. I look at Niamh Charles that went there last year. Again, not played much. She's played and she's played well. Very good player. But you just think, how much better would she be had she had regular game time? And you look at that. I look at, they've just released Jamie Lee Napier, who someone I'd seen in Scotland, left winger in Scotland, can play left back, scored 25 goals, I think it was, for Hibs. Came to Chelsea, barely played, got loaned to Birmingham, did very, very well for Birmingham, now finds herself released. And it's like, it seems to be this circle of, in football of these players going, not playing, struggling then when they sort of do go out on loan or the loan maybe not going to plan. And then after that, like I said, he's barely played any football. So it's difficult on both sides because from a player perspective, like you say, it's a short career. It's not very well paid. You want to win the medals and trophies. But at the same time, it's like, do you take the hit? Where do you take the hit in terms of development and that, because development squad football is not great. And that's why, for me, looking at the overall picture, there needs to be something in between the development squad and the first team, maybe an under 20s or 21s, and have sort of 16 to 19 as development and 20, 21 as your, your sort of in between, if you like, so to speak.
Yeah, it definitely needs to be like a bridge in the gap between there. I was going to ask Anthony this. Do you think there's the lack of fully professional sides in the women's game is also harmful as well? Because if you're not a fully professional side and players have to work another job or whatever it is they have to do to try and get some other income, do you think that has an effect on players, and that's why these young players see like Manchester City or Chelsea or Arsenal or even Manchester United as an attractive proposition because they know that they'll be comfortable. They might not have to get another job. They can just concentrate purely on football. So do you think the lack of depth of professional sides in the women's game is also hurting?
Possibly. You mentioned about another job in that, but then people, they still need to train for. It's a bit like I've mentioned previous. It's a lot different to the men's game. You're getting 300,000 a week if you're a top player in the men's game, and for a number of years, by the time your career ends or something, then you've still got all that money if you're sensible with it to fall back on, and then you got the pundit side. Obviously, you've got Alex Scott and Karen Carney that do punditry now, but with the women's game, if you don't get into I feel like the men's side of it, like Alex Scott and that, I feel you need to do something. And that's why a lot of players such as Kirsty Hansen and Beth England in their spare time, like you said, they don't have to get jobs because they're comfortable with the money they've got. But thinking long term, they're doing courses because they're obviously thinking when their career's over, if they don't get that break in the men's game a bit more, or we don't know what the women's game's going to be like when they come to retirement age with the money and that. So it's difficult in the women's game because the money, it's always the money gap in it. So it's a difficult one. They've got to think about themselves. But it is, if you're not getting a full-time contract and you're not getting enough money, then yeah, and that could possibly be because there's not enough full-time clubs. But like we said earlier, there is a lot more that are going to become professional next season, and you never know, in the next couple of years it could keep building up, and we're a long way from being anywhere near the men's game financially, but hopefully it'll get to a stage where they are got a comfortable wage, and so they don't have to be thinking, and it's not just the playing side of it. If they get a serious injury and you have to retire because of it, it's that as well, the financial implications that come with that. Because like I said, in the women's game, unless you're forwarded into the men's like Alex Scott and that, it can be hard, and that could force you to back into work like me and you do. So it is a difficult one.
Yeah, absolutely. To end on this, Matt, how do we fix it? How do we get the FA to fix it? Should it be pressure from the clubs to maybe say, listen, we need, like you said, that gap, maybe to under 21 level where we can, keep these players in academies a little bit longer? make sure we could develop the game a little bit more, give them regular playing time, instead of giving them, instead of having this sort of no option but to find a club and sort of risk stifling their development, risk putting themselves back a couple of years because they're not hardly playing. Where should the pressure come from? Should the pressure come from within the clubs? Should the FA themselves be looking at the game in the whole and going, something's not right here? Whether young players having to find other ways to try and sustain a career in the game, and it could be at the detriment to their to development. I know there's no easy answer, but where should the actual pressure come from?
I think. Well, listen. The FA have put these rules in place, so for me, it has to come from the FA. But, and it's a but, the issue we've got is the people that are calling the shots and involved in the game do not have a Scooby-Doo about grassroots or development or anything like that. You're talking about people that have, maybe been involved in the game at a small level. But, for me, we can, in the men's game, they have sort of ex-players, don't they? For example, former United player Martin Buchan was involved in the PFA. Gordon Taylor used to play involved in the PFA. You look at ours, and you think, well, bloody hell, what forgot? Now, for me, and you mentioned retired players before about broadcasting. Retired players, if they fancy it, could sit on the FA board and could actually overhaul and look at this, because at the end of the day, it's not only a problem in the men's game now, it's creeping into the women's game. And like I say, I understand the sentiment behind it, and everybody wants, to bring through the best young English talent. But the whole system in general, from coaching to facilities to grassroots, and again, we've done shows on this. This is how much we care about it, but it needs an overhaul. And it's becoming the point where, the German kids, the Spanish kids, the French, the Italian, they're taught a different way. So they are levels ahead of us. They're better than our players. And it means that their young players coming through are excellent. You only have to look at the German sort of model. And, even in the men's, they're brought through and they're all in that stage together. And the teams go through cycles. So, like, Germany, they might have won the under-21 Euros and they all move up together and then they win that. And you saw it with Spain, did they win a World Cup and a Euros or 2 Euros back-to-back, something like that? Yeah. Brazil are in a rebuilding process at the minute, the men's side. So I think, it's got to be done right. It's got to have people on board that know what they're talking about and actually know about grassroots. And I think, like I said before, forcing the minutes. If we're talking about, hoarding players, force them to be played, force and say, right, if they don't play a certain amount of minutes, I don't know, it's a fine involved or whatever. I honestly don't know. Like I say, I'm not sitting on the FA board, but like I say, from having experience working in this sort of academy development phase of, bringing people through, I think this is the way. It's great that they want to do it and it's great that they're looking to do it, but there's ways to do it. And I think, we're not going about it the right way. We're not ploughing in at the very bottom. We're not getting the coaches. We're not getting the facilities. And it just all filters through. Like I say, you can change it and say, oh, well, you can have one more player and you can have 6 loans and all this. But at the end of the day, I don't think that the club's going to be bothered. The clubs are just going to hoard it. Like I said before, it's a box tick. You're not telling me Chelsea are going to be bothered about developing English talent. Yes, they are responsible for it as an English club. However, if they can go out and buy, I don't know, let's say an 18-year-old Spanish player that's going to be miles better than an 18-year-old English player, who are you going to have? At the end of the day, that manager's there to win trophies. It's cutthroat. It's literally win, win, win and success. If your players aren't good enough, you're not going to do that. And we've had conversations as fans, such a player in our opinion isn't good enough, or we need to get somebody here. And that's just the way football is. You move on and you move with the times based on, where your club wants to go and your ambition and what you want to win. Now, if those English players aren't good enough, so be it. And I'm sure, if Natalie's watching, she's got strong opinions on looking abroad. And you can kind of see why, because you look at the likes of Ona that came in and have hit the ground running. Perfect example. And you think, well, hang on, let's think who we have fullbacks. Right, okay, this player, that player. Who may we have had we not let people go? For example, Lotta went and didn't last very long. And it's one of them, you can't afford to be, oh well, they're English, let's just bring them through because they're English. Because at the end of the day, there's a process to development, and it needs to be done correctly. And Natalie made a good point yesterday, or it might have even been the day before. It was one of the shows this week, and she was saying, we need a manager that's maybe scouted abroad, that does have the know-how, because we've sort of played it safe. And I agree. At the end of the day, it's who's good enough for your club. So we've got to really put plans in place, not only with the FA and running it, but through all the whole system, right down from kicking a ball age 4 and 5 to coaches there, to facilities, to funding, the whole lot. But I can completely see why they're doing it. And listen, I'm not against it. I'm just against the way they're implementing it and the rules they're putting in place, because it just, like I say, it's box ticking. They're just throwing it out there with no thought. Well, any mug could have done that. I could have gone down to LSV when we were in the stands and said to somebody, right, this is what we need. You go and do that. Do you know what I mean? And any idiot could have said you need 8 players and they've all got to be English. It's great, but how you implement it determines how well. But listen, we may be sat in 2 years' time discussing how well England have done and, the sort of the youth teams. But it's very telling, we've watched our England under sort of 23s, 21s, 19s, 18s. And to be fair, they're struggling tournaments. It's not just first team, it's the whole, like I say, the process. So, I'd love to revisit this video in 2-3 years' time and say, oh yeah, I was completely wrong, what an idiot and all that, But as we're sitting here now, this is my thoughts on it. And Vicky says there, English players will only benefit from playing with world-class players. This is it. We're stopping players coming in. We're having all these rules and EU quotas and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, if they're playing with, Tom, Dick and Harry that aren't good enough versus world-class from wherever, then they're only going to improve that way. And it's the old saying, isn't it? If you're good enough, you're old enough. Wayne Rooney was chucked in at the first team at Everton once in very, very young age because he was good enough. He was training with the best. Can you imagine if they'd have just left him on the bench or something? I said, oh, well, we're box ticking here. We're just going to keep you in because you're English. Absolutely ridiculous. But hey-ho, we move on.
Yeah, lots of lessons for the FA to take. Before I do move on, there is, evening David Mudd, there is something up here that Ugly Bear put on. He wants to know why I transfer the women's game so much to the men's that has to be a flaw in the women's game. John Foss obviously asked, how do you mean? And then he replied, I mean, the men's game, the transfers, etc., there's a transfer, etc., right? But the women's game seems like they don't, and any player can up anywhere. I think it's a bit confusing, maybe the contracts, and a lot of the women's signings seem to be out of contract players. And can you maybe clear it up for maybe Ugly Bear a little bit, Max? I know you're pretty clued up on the old transfers and contract situations.
Yeah, I hate keep mentioning the word money, but it's effectively what it's down to. So I'm going to have to mention it. But yeah, so clubs at the minute are only just being able to afford to offer 2-year, 3-year deals. Again, due to finance, because, well, just purely because of paying the player. If player gets an injury and insurance is a nightmare and doesn't pay out and things like that, and you still got to pay a player, there just isn't the finance. So you tend to see 1-year deals offered, occasionally 2 if it's a very good player. And we're now starting to see exceptional players or bigger clubs, like your Chelsea's, offer 3-year deals. Now, there's always a big turnover of players because of this. And I think what if you bring the comment back up, the one after John's, was it something about picking and choosing where they go? Just under John's reply, I think it was. We found it.
Just on here.
That's it. Yeah, they can end up anywhere. I think with that game, because in the women's game, they tend to manage themselves. Some are represented by agents. Again, you see that with United and bigger clubs. But a lot of the players sort of call their own shots and decide on their moves. Now, with obviously, like I said, because they're free agents, they're pretty much free to do that, and you will see them moving around a lot season after season. You look at the likes of Villa, big turnover play. Tottenham released a load. Reading, not long ago, got rid of quite a few. Charlton Athletic, I think, have just got rid of 12, maybe 13. Obviously, they're transitioning into full time, so that's a little bit different. But the norm usually is you do see a good chunk of players keep moving constantly throughout the career. Now, this won't change unless longer term deals and more finance, as well as TV, in addition to that, comes into the game. So yeah, I mean, hopefully that answers the question. If there's any more comments or anything on that people want to know, if I can answer it, I will. That genuinely tends. Go on.
Yeah, you just said there the women's game should be able to generate their own wealth, income, and have proper transfer fees for players, etc.
I think that's then it, because a lot do move on freebies. Yeah, I think because a lot do move on freebies, but again, because there's not the finance to buy those players, that's why. It's like a vicious circle because there's no money for clubs to back. Because I've been critical of this. All our Alex Greenwood money was spent on 2 players that didn't last 2 minutes at the club. It's spent on a goalkeeper, 13 grand on a goalkeeper that's just been released from Tottenham, and 27 grand on a left back that's gone back to Sweden. So you think that 40k has just disappeared. It's gone, you know what I mean? This is why women's clubs in a whole make a loss. And it's one of them, there's no money as such for everybody to pay transfer fees, which means that they offer short contracts, which means that everybody's free. So it's like I say, it's kind of a vicious circle because it's like a constant turnover of players. And it's only now with, like I say, this Sky money and a little bit of sponsorship, we might be seeing, like we with LJ, we took her, and I think the last season she signed a 3-year deal. So she's still got this season coming up and next season under contract. Obviously with that then, because she's under contract, somebody will have to, obviously Chelsea, in this instance, will have to pay a fee, and quite a substantial fee. But, it's one of them. A lot of clubs don't have the finance. So therefore, you do see the big turnover of players. In terms of improving that, I don't know. Sponsorships and things like that, really. But that's probably a whole nother show, to be fair. But I think it is difficult in terms of transfers. Because like you said, it's so complex. It's completely different to the men's game. But the men's game's littered with money. They get ridiculous amounts from Sky. The women's teams, you're probably looking at $500,000 each, which is good money. Don't get me wrong. It's brilliant for the women's game, considering players move for anything around 150 grand if you're top end world class to less. $500,000 isn't that bad. But then you think factor in wages, bonuses, all sorts of things where money's going out as well. It's difficult. But yeah, the men's game, there's a lot of players stuck at clubs. Yeah, because of wages. Again, it's difficult, and you don't want to see in the women's game players stuck like that because of high wages. When you're struggling to shift them on and not be able to take them on. So in that respect, the freebies isn't a bad thing. It does give players a bit more choice and freedom to move. And obviously, if there's fallings out, for example, Babajide at Liverpool, she's been training with the reserve since January. She's stuck in limbo with a contract and she can't get out of there, and Liverpool want to move her on, and she's like, well, no, I'm entitled to my wages, which she is under the laws of a contract. But it's difficult and it is very, very complex. So, yeah, it's in a world of its own.
Anthony, Jonathan wants you to answer this question. Who do you think will sign this summer, pal?
Who's that? I think will sign.
John. Yeah, who do you think will sign, mate?
That's a very good question. I've heard talks about, obviously, when you've been in these other chats, there's been reports of that Norwegian midfielder, but Boarison or whatever she's
Borisa.
So we could get her. But he's sort of left me stuck there because I just see from what people talk. Obviously, you've got the names that everyone mentions, like Bagley and that. I think we definitely need a keeper that the manager is going to trust if our first team keeper is injured. And like I've said before, with Casey, she clearly didn't, because like Craney said earlier, Bentley for half hour, she could have played the whole game against Burnley. What positions do you think? Well, John, we need another keeper or keeper that's going to be trusted to deputise or even become first choice if there's an injury. We need another fullback. I would like, people have mentioned her before, that Brighton defender Letitia, whatever. I think she'd be good, and plus she'd be good for the eight player quota as well, English, isn't she? So I think it all depends on players that go, doesn't it? If Amy Turner goes to America, it's all up in the air, isn't it? It's all like, oh, this person's going, then we need another centre back. We need at least 7 or 8, but then if we lose 10 people, then we need to replace all of them, I'd say, but with quality that's going to hopefully get us further. I don't want to getting rid of people and then we buy people in that are going to make us drop down to like 5th or 6th because other teams have improved. And then we're still waiting for the release list, aren't we? So when the release list comes out, I'm sure we'll be able to talk about what we need and hopefully what we can get. Like I mentioned before, Lauren going to Chelsea, Siggy going to Leicester. I'd like Beth England at United, but I think it's one of them ones where when United decide to release who's going and that, I think we'll be in a better position to say who we want and what we need. But we do need a good overhaul, though. We need, Tobin and Kristen going is going to leave a massive void. So we definitely need to be getting people that are sort of on their calibre. But it does worry me a bit. It's not easy to get players like them. And it goes back to the manager as well. Who the manager is. Is the manager going to have players that enjoy playing for him or her? So it's all ifs and buts at the moment.
Ben, can I just jump in dead quick on that? Can I ask Anthony? Because Anthony, I think it was not last week, maybe the week before, and I've had discussions on Twitter. Where do you stand in terms of signing players without a manager? Because I know me and Benny talked about this, and we were sort of the opinion that it should still happen because we don't think it's worth missing out on targets. A manager that's good enough should be able to come in and work with players already at their disposal, obviously, because we've still got people in the contract. But what are your thoughts on that? Because I know there's a certain person, and I'm sick of telling him. I'm sure we all know who he is, but panicking and going into overdrive saying, we can't sign anybody, a new manager's not coming in. And this person wanted to start pre-season with the 12 contracted players, which I thought was absolutely ridiculous.
Nah.
Where do you stand on that then? I'm assuming you sort of agree with me and Ben if you're going with your no comment.
It's a bit of both, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's all common. I think it's common knowledge that Casey's been talking about the transfers before she announced and everything. And I think as a club, you need to, obviously United would have authorised them. So
exactly.
They've trusted Casey. Yeah, if this is what you think, because Casey, ever professional, even when she knew she was going, she'd be professional. So I agree on that side that it shouldn't matter who the manager's going to be. Yes, when the manager does come in, you want him or her to bring in some of their own players.
Yeah,
of course
sure.
we do. But when we get back to pre-season, who I don't know who it is, I must have missed it, but I don't want a squad of 12 going into like pre-season. We need to have a bit of a squad that, if it does take a bit of while to get a few more transfers in, that we've got. We don't want to be getting to like the first. You only have to look at like the COVID and that. We don't want to be getting to a stage. I know it's a bit less now in the bubbles and all that, but we don't want to be getting to a stage where we've only got 11 players because there's been an outbreak or something, or there's been an injury crisis or something. So it's a bit of both. I think getting in players before the manager is fine. I think deep down, if Casey will, even though she's gone, she'll still want us to improve as a club, and she wouldn't go, oh, we should get this player in and that player in, if she doesn't think that they're going to improve the club as a whole.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Listen, I agree. Thing is, I'd said it for a bit not long after she'd left, and I know Emma Sanders said it the other day. Two, possibly three, have already been done. And my sort of thing was, saying to this particular person that you can't just break a deal when it's a pre-signed contract because it's legally binding without having to pay the player off. But yeah, it was one. It was just interesting, like I say, because obviously, me and Benny had talked about it, and obviously, listen, there's still coaching staff in place. You're not telling me that they're not going to ask the coaching staff as well, But no, just like I say, I thought I'd chuck that in because obviously, it's been a bit of a discussed topic, and it's always good to hear people's thoughts. Sorry, Benny, back to you.
No worries.
No, you're all right. No, it's a very good question, Matt. To be fair, I just want to ask this one on Ugly Bear as well. Again, is there a list of potential candidates? Not really, mate. Just here's rumours, isn't it?
Couple of names thrown out.
A couple of names, as always, but nothing
unless
concrete.
You're another certain person that apparently said Jill Ellis was done. That's actually backfired on him. And he allegedly heard from his contact at the club that's absolutely just rained on his parade because it's not happening and it's gone down the pan. So that was a good laugh, must admit. Same guy that waffled on last season as well.
Vicky, as fans, we can sign what we need. It's obvious for the gaps. Vicky for manager.
Do you know what? We should do that. They should put it to vote. Forget the incoming manager that's not arrived yet. We'll put it to fans vote. We'll send in lists. I've always been a fan of sending in a transfer list. There's that many opinions. We may as well. Fans aren't daft.
Exactly. Exactly.
On the whole, I take that back. On the whole, there's one or two that call themselves fans, but the majority of us that know what we're talking about. See, Victor's with me. We can do it. I agree. Let's go.
Why not?
Email in tomorrow.
Email
CVs. Make sure you get it right.
Email CVs into John Murto.
That's it. We'll do the scouting for free. Never mind paying somebody. We'll just do it.
Yeah.
Can't be any worse. Anyway, I want to try and squeeze this next one in, pal, because I know we've got sidetracked a little bit with transfers.
We'll be all right.
Yeah, I know, mate. It's nothing that you sort of linked me to in the old WhatsApp group. And this is Megan Stowe sent a tweet out on the 10th of July, a couple of days ago. Isn't it mad some women playing in tiers 3 and 4 are having to wait on an NHS list to get ACL surgery because their clubs can't help them? Before you even think about paying players, back the player, not only when she wears the shirt, but when she can't too. Huge issue in her opinion. And then she also says, so sad it fills me with dread. Similar to coming back after having children in many ways too. Some people come back very quickly, sometimes struggle. It's hard to balance life around football, and it's why we're making it harder. So, or stuff like that, Matt. It's a very, very interesting subject, though, because I didn't realise that lower down in tiers 3 and below that they were struggling for stuff like ACL surgery. I only thought that was something that amateur footballers were struggling with it, in the grassroots level. That's a big struggle. What the hell is going on?
To be fair, it's probably a struggle for a few championship clubs, if I'm being brutally honest. But yeah, like you, Megan Stowe used to play for Crawley Wasps, and she's now at AFC Wimbledon. And I saw the tweet, obviously, and I mentioned it to you because for me, it was interesting. It took me back to when we went to Charlton and the shambles there, and lack of player care. And again, something we've spoken about time and time again. But yeah, basically, she was sort of saying that, there's obviously because the NHS is behind in operations due to everything sort of going on COVID-wise, that players or her teammates and other people that she knows are in the game mainly in tiers 3 and 4 and downwards. But like I said, I'm pretty sure there'll be the odd 1 or 2 in the Championship. Having to wait on the NHS 12 months, maybe more, to get an operation due to costs of obviously, you know, going private. Now, if you think an ACL or your cruciate is 9 to 12 months out the game, and you're being told you've got to wait 12 months as a minimum for surgery, you're looking at 2 years out the game there. Now, are players that pay to play, and this is tiers 3 downwards, you know, they pay subs to play, are they going to come back? Possibly not. You know, if I said to you, oh, Benny, you know, 2 years out of work, you're not getting paid, you've got to wait, you can't work, you know, you'd be like, what the hell, you know? So these players are playing for the love of the game. The club either can't afford to do it, or they've not taken out insurance because medical insurance would cover it. And it's difficult. You know, you talked about Megan sort of talking about, you know, if players have children and making it difficult to come back again. I'd heard on that they were bringing in some sort of ruling, but I don't quote me on that, you know, especially because I think Siobhan Chamberlain was the first sort of big name, wasn't she? Sort of announce it. It tends to be uncommon. And, you know, United were great with her. They paid her sort of throughout that period of time that she was off. And she did other work for the club as well, which was good. But again, lower down, there's nothing like that. And it's difficult. So, you know, clubs don't tend to take out the insurance, again, due to cost, you know, and it's one where I've talked about before, you know, I've seen players having to crowdfund so they can go private. And I think I said to you, Ben, didn't I? You're sort of looking 2 to 3K to go private for an ACL or cruciate operation. Now, they've not got that sort of money. You know, this, again, they're not getting paid for this. And it's sad to see. It really is. You know, I don't understand why there isn't more help from the FA. You know, you wanting players in your game. You only have to look at there's some great clubs down in, you know, tiers 3 and 4. You know, I've talked about on my show on Tuesday, the likes of Wolves, Ipswich, Southampton, Crawley, you know, Watford have just come up as well. There's more than that, you know. Portsmouth have got a good setup. But it's frightening and worrying because you think these players, you know, are going to be the future of the game, especially the younger players. You know, Ipswich, I think yesterday, just gave a professional deal to one of their 18-year-olds. You know, again, it's unheard of. Burnley's another club, actually, going pro, 3rd tier. And there just needs to be a better care package. And, you know, I get finance is the thing, but then that's where the FA come in for me. You know, the insurance policies will cover little bits, but they won't cover big things like that, and there's an extra cost. And I think, you know, it's difficult when they are relying on the NHS for treatment because, like I say, if it's something serious and you're having to wait, you're looking at a minimum of 2 years before you're back kicking a ball. And players are just losing enthusiasm. I know, like I said, you know, I certainly would if that was me. So it's just a crazy situation. I mean, listen, we knew because we knew Charlton was a cock-up, and that was back then. And they actually got fined for that. Now, they got fined £500, which, funnily enough, was the cost of a second tank of oxygen. So it's like, you know, it's just basic. I'm just glad that player for Charlton wasn't very, very serious because that could have opened up a whole can of worms, not only for Charlton, but the FA. And I think it's just shocking, you know, that this player care is basically going out the window. Now, like I say, you know, it's not every club, but it is quite common in tier 3 downwards and your Championship club. But, you know, it shouldn't be down to the players to go looking for crowdfunding and to be asking sponsors, can they help them with this or such a thing. You know, they at the end of the day, they're turning out representing that club. So that club, for me, has got to do better with the overall care of that player for me.
Absolutely. I could just imagine it now. I'm trying to imagine it in my head now. If you shattered your ACL, you ruptured your cruciate ligament, and how much pain you're going to be in, and then you're not to be able to get operated on for 12 months. That's just barbaric, really. Especially we're living in, as John Fry said in the comments there, we're living in 2021. How is this still happening to players? I'm going to come to you, Anthony. What is the solution? I sort of mentioned to Matt in the WhatsApp group that me and Matt are on. I sort of mentioned to him, maybe is it something like, for example, I work and like a couple of quid out of my wages. I get paid weekly, so every week, no more than a fiver comes out of my wages, and it goes to my pension fund. Should there be like maybe an emergency fund type thing that maybe a couple of quid each week gets taken out the player's wage and then put into like a sort of an insurance policy? But then the more I think about it, that's punishing the player in a way, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe the clubs should do more. Maybe the FA should do more. Maybe the clubs should have a collective one where all their players are insured. They put a certain amount in a month, and the FA top that up. And so if they aren't waiting for operations on an ACL, they don't have to wait 12 months. They can go private if need be. Do you think there's any way around it?
It's difficult, isn't it? The club as a whole should have that duty of care towards the player. We all know at a lower level it's hard with money and that. So you could, but then the club should have this type of insurance anyway for when things like this do happen, so that the player can get the best possible care and get back as quick as they can. Because it's not just the physical side of it, is it? It's the mental side.
Absolutely.
You think it's bad enough. You're thinking, I'm going to be out for a year or two. But the mental side of it as well, you're there just wanting to get back, but it can have an effect, can't it? Because am I going to be able to play again? Am I going to get back to the level I was at? If not, then what happened? You got to go out and get a job and that. So I think the club should be putting more into place for the welfare. I think the FA could do their part as well. I don't know what they can do, but they've got to. If I get injured at work, then it's a hard one, isn't it? I know in certain sports, like I used to do obstacle course racing, and you could get this. You can get like insurance with Bluefin. You pay a certain amount a month, and it covers certain stuff. But if you're being signed by a club, now I think they should. It should be down to them more than the player. It's money as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
If it's hard, it's a hard one. It's difficult when, like Craney says, we always go back to money, especially with the women's game. They're not got that luxury that the men have. You know, if you're going to do your ACL in the men's, then you are going to get your operation ASAP. So there definitely needs to be something sorted so that they don't have to worry so much. But like I said, it's a club and FA thing. They all need to work together.
Benny, can I just jump in on that finally before we wrap? Because I know you were saying about your idea, and I like your idea. The only sort of, not the problem with it, but the only thing is you were talking about wages and that, which is great. But if you're tier 3 and 4, you're volunteering, you're not paid a wage. So
that's why I think
in that respect, it's difficult. However, I don't know if you remember my reply to you. You know, those players play subs usually monthly is the way it works. So for me, the way around it in tiers 3 downwards would be 50% of that goes towards taking out proper insurance, because again, Anthony's just mentioned it, it's money. They're taking shortcuts, and the insurance isn't covering a serious injury. It's probably covering something, basic or minor. Because I link that back to when I was, involved a lot more than I am now in sort of PE and things like that. And, I still coach tennis now, and I've got to have my own public liability insurance. Why do I have to have that? Because the ones at the tennis club are basic. So it's literally ridiculously basic. And with mine, I've had to sort of fund that myself and pay for that to make sure that everybody in my care, which is my responsibility, is properly cared for. Now, this is where football clubs or the FA, somebody should be, like I say, use some of that subs money to make sure that there's adequate sort of medical insurance and care, and that players can access that. But, I loved your idea. I just thought I'd throw that in there before somebody sort of said, oh, well, they don't get paid, because it's true. They don't, they just get expenses. But just to give a general, and this is why we talk about it, and this is why it's great, because it's very difficult. But, like I say, everybody from tier 3 downwards is a volunteer. And, people running the club, physios, whichever, they're doing it for the love of the game. Now, obviously, yes, they're qualified, but at a lower and a more basic level. And again, Anthony's spot on, and we've all said it's down to money. But, again, it's difficult when you're sort of in that position of where's that, 2 to 3K plus coming from. But, I mean, subs is one thing. Sponsors is difficult, because when you lower it down, they want big brand exposure, and you don't always get that in the 3rd tier. So, yeah, just to wrap on that, I think it does become a responsibility for me of the club, because the players are the responsibility and care of the club, and also the FA, because it's their game.
Absolutely, mate. And as I said before, just wondering about the mental state of the players that have to go through this ordeal. Worried about money, worried about because obviously they won't be able to work as well for a long time if you've got a serious injury like that. So it definitely needs looking at, and the FA need to take a lot more responsibility, and so do the clubs, in helping their players, in protecting their welfare, making sure they get the treatments that they need to get, an operation they need to have them as soon as they possibly can, instead of waiting 12 months, which is just ridiculous. But anyway, we're going to wrap it up in a minute, because we have been going for a while, well over an hour again. And I know the Euros is back on, and both games are back playing again.
Ridiculous that Denmark's carrying on, but anyway.
Yeah.
I think the players wanted to play, apparently. The Danish players wanted to play, so...
They must have done. Because you would, if they weren't up to it, it would have been off, wouldn't it? So...
Yeah.
True.
But yeah, before I wrap up, Matt, schedule going up on Sunday again, mate, for the rest of the week?
It is indeed, yeah. Schedule up. We will also have the weekly roundup. That'll be out probably tomorrow as well, actually, to catch up on all the shows. Don't worry, Ben. Getting aggro off.
By the way, that refreshes in a few days' time.
So good, John. 15th, I think. But yeah, like I say, just schedule out tomorrow. Catch ups out as well tomorrow. The other thing, season tickets are on sale now, so get yourself a season ticket. If you're a first, we'll use Matt's Tuesday allowance, typical. That's the best show of the week to make way for his fans pub catch up. Brilliant. No, I'm just messing, John. No, yeah, as we're saying, season tickets are on sale, so if you're a first time buyer, £39, get yourselves down. You literally can't go wrong with that. That's less or the same as one men's ticket. So get there. Again, Barmy Army have done an excellent job this week in sorting out the renewals, because they were trying to charge us full whack despite still owing us money. So, sign up to Barmy Army, get yourself a member, get yourself a season ticket, and keep an eye out tomorrow on the schedule. Make sure you subscribe. I mean, most of the people watching have subscribed, but tell your mates, get them on it, and anybody else that's still trying to find us.
Before our boss, John Foster, kicks my backside, our Twitter page, if we get to 600 followers, there's going to be this special something. I don't know what it is because he's refusing to tell me.
John's going to DJ live from his back garden. That's what it is.
Yeah, so I find it hard to promote something for you people when
he's going to have a big party.
The boss won't tell me what it is in the first place. But we get to 600 follows on our Twitter page, the Off United WFC Twitter account. He's got something special planned and special lined up. So I know a lot of you already following, but if you get your friends, your members of your family all following, to boost up to 600. I think we're just a few shy of 500. I'm not 100. I think it was 478 followers we had last time I looked. But if we could boost that up to 600 over the next couple of weeks, that would be absolutely amazing. And we can find a guy out, John, what the hell is actually going on. Like Matt said, he probably is DJing from his back garden.
John and his teddy bears live from his back garden in Birmingham. A special Sunday special.
And Anthony would be there with his face painted and dancing away like a dancing queen.
Yeah, whilst we can't go to clubs for another extra month now, John's going to DJ every Sunday until lockdown's fully lifted.
Absolutely. So please. I know you're a lot in the comments. I know you're all following, but please, if you could just beg your members, your family, your friends,
borrow steal.
Beg, borrow, steal, please. Anthony can do a Bez. To be fair, Anthony make a great Bez.
Bez from Happy Mondays. Can you
I don't know who he is.
But anyway, Anthony, where can people find you on the if they want to find you on across the social media platforms?
They can find me at ATC Wilson on Twitter.
He's on the screen, you can't forget.
Yeah.
And Matt, for you, even though people might actually already know all this.
Yeah, as per, they'll probably see me discussion/rants throughout the week, but hey ho, it's all for the good of the team. But as usual, at Matt Crane 15. And
I'm at Benny MAC on Twitter, Benjamin Brazil on Instagram. Don't really use Facebook, so you don't need to know that. Father Sons of United on the old YouTube's my own channel. Off United WFC YouTube channel, which you're watching on right now. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you like, make sure you share. Make sure you tick the bell notification so you'll always get the info and latest videos popping up onto your feed straight away, so you don't have to go searching for it. And we shall see you next week. Thank you to Matt, as always, and thank you to Anthony.
Pleasure.
It's been fantastic today. And he's not had his mouth full of rice or whatever it was that on Matt's show. And before I go, I want to say one more thing. I know I'm dragging it out. John is going to kill me. But I really, really do wish Christian Eriksen a full and speedy recovery, because he is one hell of a footballer. By the way, your show is now 30 minutes apparently, Matt. But
that's all right. I pre-recorded the other 30, so we'll go live for 30 and pre-record 30. It's not a problem.
Not a problem. Right, we'll end it there. Thank you very much, people.